Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Parenting in the Far North. I'm your host, Ariane Aramburo. Today's guest is Kevin Hartwell. Now, Kevin had a long career in film and television, beginning in Hollywood, then Seattle, and then coming back to Alaska 28 years ago to work in public television in Juneau, then right here at KTUU. He's produced over a dozen documentaries, winning numerous awards, including an Emmy for a public service campaign while here at Channel 2. He formed Alaska Life Publishing with journalist wife Josie and launched 3 Alaska lifestyle magazines and websites: Alaska Bride and Groom, Alaska Home, then Alaska Parent, which debuted over 10 years ago in print, online, and social media. So please welcome to the podcast, Kevin Hartwell. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Ariane.
So you're kind of here at your old stomping ground.
Yeah, it's doing nothing but growing here. It's wonderful.
Well, you have quite the resume. Before we kind of get into all that and parenting and talking, tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of your background, your tie to Alaska, and yeah.
Well, I'm an outdoor enthusiast, and even as a child, I assumed that, being in Southern California, that I'd end up here someday.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
We always get pulled back here.
Yeah, well, I never left, but I thought, well, and I came up here 28 years ago and said, well, I'll stay 5 years and see how it goes.
5 turn 2.
28. So, but up here, I just, we had our kids. My son was born in Seattle before we came here, and then my daughter was born in Juneau.
Oh, okay.
But my focus has been kids the whole way. I was a scout leader. I've coached over 300 kids in baseball, hockey, mainly soccer. This has been my passion. Kids have been my passion.
Yeah. So your kids are grown now. What are their ages, and what was that like for you, being a dad and raising them?
That's the best part of life, I think. It's, they're in their mid-20s, and they're both living in Oregon now.
Okay.
They graduated from U of O down there and never left.
So they never left there.
Yeah. But they want to come back and visit. And my son wants to come back and fish for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the time to do it for summer. What was the best part about being a dad with them? So you had a boy and a girl.
Boy and a girl. Just spending time with them, really. I mean, that's what I would tell any parent, is spend as much time with your kids as you can, because, when they get to be in their mid-20s, you may not see them, you may not hear from them.
Yeah.
Long periods in between, but.
And it goes by so fast.
Yeah, but just being involved in every part of their lives, from the sports to the scouting to, I toured around the country with my daughter for hockey. She played for the national championships. She won state in soccer, and I tell everybody, my kids are going to turn 20. He says, Dad, was I ever a teenager?
Yeah.
So my daughter was changing from her hockey gear into her soccer gear on the way from one practice to another.
Oh, my goodness.
But no, it was the, awesome part of my life. And, don't regret a minute of it.
Yeah, well, shout out to them. All right, well, let's kind of get into your publications, these lifestyle magazines. How did this kind of all come about? I love that you have the 3. We had Alaska Bride and Groom, Alaska Home, and then, of course, Alaska Parent, which, here, parenting podcasts. What made you want to delve in that way?
Well, I have to blame that on my wife, Josie, the journalist. So I was here, and being in Alaska, there's as opportunities to do things that nobody's done yet. On the lower 48, in cities, there's multiple bride magazines, home design magazines, parent magazines, and we came up here and there was nothing. We started with the bride magazine, and when I talked to people, they said, well, when we get engaged, we immediately fly to Seattle to buy a dress and make all the coordination, So we try to create a venue for local businesses to, get their fair share of that. So
nice.
And that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And now we do, tell you that we do the largest wedding show in the state now, the Fall Wedding Show, which is at the Alaska Airlines Center.
Okay.
That'll be October 6th. But this is our 15th year of doing that or something like that.
Yeah, and putting Alaska on the map, and Alaska's grown, Anchorage too, so that's great that you guys have that. Alaska Parent, talk a little bit about some of the topics that you guys cover in that. I know also you take, for folks to submit maybe like opinions and things like that. Are you guys always looking for that?
We do. We have sections where we ask questions. Parents come in and ask questions. We do health and wellness articles, every issue for the whole family, which includes CPR, mental health news, heavier subject, teen depression, postpartum wellness, that kind of things, and teen smoking, alcohol, social media safety for sure is a big thing with me. So, and then, ideas for fun and healthy activities with a family. Get outside and we do like once a year we do 50 to 80 free activities you can do with your kids. Doesn't cost anything, but things they can do right here in Anchorage or in Alaska. Then we have an education enrichment guide in every issue, and we cover, tips and advice to have a successful school year for both parents and the kids. And school activities, just helpful tips, parenting advice for all ages and stages, from babies, toddlers, and preschoolers, school age, teens and tweens.
Teens, yeah, tweens.
And
what's been the feedback since you've had it out? It's been 10 years?
Yeah, a little over 10 years. No, it's been incredible. And the magazine's free. It's on newsstands, the free magazines statewide, and digital issues online at alaskaparent.com. But a lot of agencies, government agencies, clinics, everybody distributes the magazines out, and they said this is a wonderful, wonderful product and so helpful. I mean, parenting is not easy.
It is. I know. Is there? We're always looking for the rule book, and there isn't one.
We're not a real rule book, but hopefully we can hold some hands.
Some guidance, because I know a lot of people too. Alaska is big; it's a vast state, but sometimes people too that are new here. What do we do? We're cooped up in the winter for how many months? So when the summertime hits, I feel like everybody just wants to get out, and then, as soon as kind of back to school hits, everybody kind of becomes hermit crabs again. So I love that you guys give those activities. Do you guys touch on things like that about just how Alaska is just so different, and parenting up here? What is your just kind of take on being a parent and parenting in Alaska?
I think it's a great place to raise kids, actually. Being from metropolitan areas originally, I love being here and I love raising the kids here. I wouldn't have done it any other way. There's just so many things to do. I mean, you're a short drive to the best fishing in the world, hiking, camping, so many things.
And you got to get out in the winter too. So you got to force yourself to get out.
Yeah, that's just it. You have to. I tell people you have to embrace the winter. You can't fight it.
Yeah.
So whether it's cross country skiing or, take the kids sledding and then. Got them into a little bit of skiing, and they picked up on snowboarding, of course, real quick. So.
Nice, yeah.
So they were embracing the winter.
I love that. Let's talk about some of the topics you are passionate about. We'll start with just screen time. I'm sure it's, screen time and tablets and social media. It's grown so much. It's evolved. It's kind of like this generation of kiddos are being brought up on that. We have the tablets in schools, and they're learning that. Just talk a little bit about your take on, the use of screen times and really, unplugging for families to kind of unplug.
It is a big issue with me, and I know and I've witnessed firsthand parents that even from birth, tend to use tablets, cell phones as babysitters and park their kids in front of one of those devices. I see it in restaurants. I see it on airplanes. You need to engage with your children, and the screen really is not interactive. They're not really learning anything. They need to get out and socialize. As Mr. Rogers used to say, playtime is learning time. It's not to be looked at as playtime. Kids need to learn social skills. They need to be with people, human beings face to face. So it just kind of bothers me whenever I see, an entire family on an airplane or in a restaurant and they're all on their phones and nobody's talking. So.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes you got to have a healthy balance, though, because, kids are growing up in this age of, the tablets. And, while, yes, there's tons of studies on limiting the screen time. Sometimes there are those programs that kids can learn, on the screen times. Are you just completely anti-screens, or do you see kind of a balance with that, or is that a topic that comes up too with the magazine and articles before?
Yeah, there can certainly be a balance if it's something that's teaching them something. I mean, maybe it's even a foreign language or something.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. It depends on what they're doing with it. If they're just staring at it, or playing with fictional characters jumping over things or whatever,
Yeah.
hour after hour after hour. But there's two sides to it. But I may be a little jaded on it.
No, I understand. Also, with kiddos, tell me a little bit about your other passion that you want to chat about.
Domestic violence, as you know, Alaska's third in the nation, last I checked, for domestic violence. And, everybody kind of has a picture in their mind of what that is. But what many people don't realize is how it affects children in the home who witness that basically from birth till they leave home. And what often happens is domestic violence is strangely hereditary in that kids that witness it in the home think that's the way families operate. And as they grow up, statistics will prove that more often than not, well, very often, that behavior is repeated by these now grown kids in their own families. So one of my documentaries is called The Witnesses, and it's about that very subject.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. I was looking that up. Is that something someone can view, can watch? Is it available?
It is. If I just send us an email or something, and I'll send them a link.
Okay.
It was actually paid for by the Kodiak Area Native Association.
Really?
It's domestic violence in the villages is a huge topic, and I didn't even understand the effects of child witnessing of domestic violence until working on that project for weeks and months. But,
when was that? What was that process like for you? What kind of research and how did you be able to separate, work from home, or was it hard to kind of sometimes bring that home, because it's a heavy subject?
Yeah, well, I was over in Kodiak, I decided to actually make a drama out of it, which I don't usually do in documentary work. So I had, hired actors and a couple of child actors who were just incredible, and but we were basically out there in Kodiak and the Kodiak area for the entire process. So.
Nice. What other documentaries do you have under your belt, or because I know we had Hollywood on here, so you've been all around in television and things like that.
Did a couple of feature films. I started in television with sports television. Did a lot of. The first documentary was about a guy racing the Indianapolis 500 for his first time, which aired on ESPN. And I've done a couple of Olympic games and did one on Olympic archery over in Barcelona. And then up here, it's mainly been, I've done at least half a dozen films on wildlife, and
well,
so
plenty of it here.
Yeah, whales of Alaska's Inside Passage, wolves of Alaska, Alaska shorebirds, and just several. And that was one of the best times of my life professionally. Anyway, just being able to travel first, all over the nation and parts of the world, and then here in Alaska, I've been out to multiple villages, and I did a program called The Path to Wellness about overcoming substance and particularly alcohol abuse. So just staying in the villages and learning that life too. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better career.
Yeah, what was that like? Alaska is very different in that we do have these rural villages, and a lot of times, sometimes they are unplugged, and your folks like you get to go there and bring documentaries and do that. What's that like different from being here in Anchorage and experiencing kind of life out there in the village when you were there, and have you gone back?
I haven't been back for years, but it's definitely a different life, and in some ways I found it kind of attractive and simpler. I mean, certainly they have mountains of problems in the villages, but just to see the simple lifestyle and the whole social attitude. Like, I think it was in Hooper Bay, met a gal who had 16 children.
16 children.
Yeah. So she gets several copies of Alaska Parent Money. But, I was talking about it, and in those places, the way everybody's related, everybody's auntie this or whatever. And so, she says, well, the villages raise the children, and it doesn't matter if they're her kids or somebody else's kids. Everybody takes care of everybody. Don't necessarily see that in Anchorage or some of the more urban areas.
Yeah, it takes a village. That still rings true.
Sure.
I'm curious from your perspective. We haven't had a lot of men come on the podcast. We had one guy who he kind of took on the role of the stay-at-home dad. He was a professional, but he's like, look, my wife made more money. We kind of talked about it, and in the beginning, it was a little bit different for him. I'm just curious for you as a dad and as a male, just your thoughts about just new dads in general coming up with kiddos that have little ones. It's definitely a different time. A lot of the when we talk about the postpartum and kind of the kids are attached to the mom. Just any advice or your take on, for dads out there about kind of showing that vulnerable side, when they become a dad, or if they do have to be a stay-at-home dad, that's just as important of a role as, what the mom does.
It certainly is. I mean, mother's role is, over everything. But, fathers should be right there, hand in hand the whole way, and especially when it comes to the kids. I mean, the second that baby's born, your life has changed. And you can fight it, and I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
Guys don't want to give up their freedom or whatever. They still want to run around or do whatever they're doing. But, embrace it from day one. And I said, I have no regrets. I dove right in, changed diapers, fed babies, the whole 9 yards. And as they got older, just taught them everything I could, from learning how to talk to using the bathroom to walking to, and then it evolved into getting them into school, got them into preschool as soon as I could, I think when they were like 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
So just really focused on their future and their success. And that reaps rewards not only for them down the road like it did for my kids, but for me. It's like, I'm a proud papa.
Yeah. And the stages, what was your favorite stage? What is the most memorable of your kids now that they're older, in their 20s? I mean, you still have more time to go with them to get older and, have kids of their own or have their life experiences. But to where they're at now, what would you say is one of your most memorable stages with your kids?
I think between maybe the ages of 4 and 8, 5 and 10 or something like that, when they're really advancing developmentally. And that's, being together and doing things with them is so special because everything is so brand new.
Yeah.
So, but then again, as they got older, being involved in the sports and things with them is like something I'll cherish forever.
What was that like with a boy and a girl? Were they very different to parent?
Not so much. I mean, they were both very athletic, so sports was really sometimes all-consuming.
Yeah.
But my daughter didn't really go through the drama stage that a lot of adolescent girls.
I have an 8-year-old girl, I'm like,
look out for age 12 or 13.
That's what they say, and then they kind of come back as an adult. My parents live in Eagle River, and it's just kind of full circle. As you become an adult, you want to go hang back out with your parents, and it's just cool to bring up like memories and childhood memories and hear from their perspective and also from the kiddos to tell, well, hey, we remember Dad when you would do this, and back then we were like, oh my gosh, now it's like the funniest thing.
Yeah, well, my kids do it all the time. I'll get a Father's Day card or a birthday card or something and bring back little things, and I was like,
yeah.
And most of what's really been nice is the letters that I get from them now are just so full of gratitude and everything. My son just wrote me a birthday card a couple months ago about how much I had taught him how to build things and fix things and do this and that. I mean, what else could a parent want from their kid?
I would tell you, yeah. Are you prepared, and are you looking forward to when they take on their journeys? I don't know if they're married or have spouses or boyfriend, girlfriends, and then have kids of their own. Like, have you thought about entering into the grandfather era? When that will happen, if that'll happen?
Well, I'm much too young, obviously. But no, I mean, that's life, and I look forward to it. I love kids.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. So, I would look forward to that day.
So back to the magazines. Do you guys welcome people that are interested in like things that are going on in and around town, or maybe experts that would lend, or if there's a topic maybe people want to hear from? Do you guys welcome for folks to kind of give feedback, and the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, we do have a section in each issue called Ask the Expert. And, we'll take questions from our readers and then bring in, whether they're doctors or psychologists or just parents that have been there and back. So,
Yeah.
but, every issue has a, different resource guide. They're all online at alaskaparent.com. We've got activities guides, health and wellness guide, birth and babies guide. It really gets updated with the winter issue. But yeah, I urge people to check it out, go online, or if you see one walking by, just grab them. They're free.
Yeah.
So.
No, I've looked at them there. They have a lot of great information, a lot of great resources. What's in the future for not only the magazines, for yourself, for your family, that you would like to share? Kind of anything on the horizon?
Not too much. I'd like to get back into your business.
Yeah.
I miss the travel, and
Yeah.
I miss meeting so many people from so many different cultures. As you know, it's just coming to work and having every day completely different, different. And then you at the end of the day just say, wow. And then the next day comes. But, just maybe slowing down a little bit. And before I got into any of this, I was a musician and trying to get back into that. So
Okay.
it's been a long time, so I got to a little more practicing.
Some baby steps. Well, you got some free time for that. Well, that's all I had for you to chat with you about. I always like to give my guests kind of the final say, any last advice, whether it's regarding, anything that we talked about here. Just, this is a Parenting in the Far North podcast, and it's an open conversation. So, I've talked to people from all different walks of life, all different organizations, and, there's no wrong answer, but I will let you kind of have the last word. Anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
I guess just the one thing is just spend as much time as possible with your kids, and it will reap benefits that you don't even think about now, but down the road for them and for you. It all goes by really fast. So, when you're watching them pick up their high school or college diploma, that's pretty much your job is done. But just be involved from birth is their entire lives as long as you can, but especially when they're young.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Parenting in the Far North, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Kevin, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Anya.